Okay. Can everybody see my screen okay? Awesome. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about CTAs. Um, I was really excited to talk about this for my session because I've used CTAs in HubSpot since I started as a marketer. I've been using HubSpot for about a decade now. And whenever you start working in HubSpot, you have those few tools that you've been taught how to use, and then you kind of like tinker with a few more things as you get more comfortable. But CTAs, I always felt like was one of those underutilized, underappreciated things in HubSpot. Um, so let's get into some of the reasons why. So first off, the CTAs tool in HubSpot is available with Marketing Hub Starter, which I think is huge. Um, marketers, we love campaigns. We love segmenting things according to topics and, tracking. It's not worth doing if it's not able to be tracked. But the campaigns tool isn't available until you have Marketing Hub Professional, which is a really big jump. It's the most expensive professional hub. And especially if you're a small business or you're a freelancer or you just work with small to mid-sized companies, you just don't always have access to it. But CTAs is a great hack, I guess you could say, that you have access to at Marketing Hub Starter, $20 a month, and you don't have to redo everything once you maybe later have access to campaigns. Um, so this is the traditional CTA. This is what CTAs have looked like for forever, ever since, the newspaper guys were like, read all about it, telling you exactly what to do. Um, a call to action is an instruction. It's telling you specifically where you should click, where you should look, what you should do. And buttons are the internet's way of appealing to that. But that's like not what they are at all anymore, especially in HubSpot. Um, so let's talk about types of CTAs in HubSpot, especially now. There have been a lot of changes in HubSpot as it comes to the CTAs tool, but the main thing that probably everybody already knows is there's two types. There are pop-up CTAs and there are embed CTAs. And the main difference is pop-ups will pop up or they'll appear when you tell them to appear when the visitor meets a certain amount of criteria or takes a certain action. But embeds are embedded and they do not need triggered. They will be there the whole time. They won't change, they won't disappear. So that's really essential for just like knowing what to choose and knowing what you're looking at when you're going into the CTA tool. So then to dive a little bit deeper, two of my favorite types of CTAs that I think are really important to mention are the embedded HTML CTA. So if you have a graphic designer or a web developer who has a piece of code that they want, whatever this is, a button or an image or a combo, they want it to look exactly how they've done it. Or maybe they have a piece of tracking code or whatever piece of code they have, just use the HTML. Just paste it right in there and it'll just embed for you. But then you also have, it's funny how simple it is, but how much I love it, the simple text CTA. So at first glance, you might think that looks like literally a link. Why would I need to go into the CTAs tool to create a link? But there are a lot of reasons why you might want to. First of all, you might just really like the CTAs tool and you want to keep everything in one place. Or you might have your reporting and your dashboard set up to measure CTAs and you don't want to have to juggle a bunch of UTM links. Um, you might want to trigger workflows or sequences or any type of automated emails based on a CTA click. And sometimes it's just, I think Danielle said it in her session, but like use the tools that you're most comfortable with. That's how you're going to excel. Um, and then some other important mentions, of course, like purely images and then forms. You can make in HubSpot now, you don't have to create a form in the Forms tool alone, you can make a CTA, a form out of a CTA, um, and then just track it that way. And then that way it shows up in your reporting just the same. So, some more things that have changed a lot over the years are how we use the CTAs in HubSpot. So we have a lot of analytics features, which is why we're using them, why we love them. We have, views and clicks, click rate, submissions and submission rate if you are using forms, or attributed submissions, which is a new update that just happened recently. So even if your CTA isn't a form itself, if someone clicked on a CTA and then they filled out another form on your website, this analytics tool will tell you, like, hey, we're going to give some credit to this CTA because someone clicked on it before they converted. You can measure things over time. You can segment by campaign if you have campaigns. You can segment by type. So if it's pop-up or embed, you can segment by date range, all sorts of things. But then automation. So in the workflows tool, this is just a screenshot of the workflows tool. And the bane of my existence is the difference between the CTA legacy and the new CTAs tool, which could be its own session. But, when you want to trigger something in a workflow, you can use CTAs. You don't just have to use form submissions, or you don't just have to use page views. You can get super, super granular about, what types of content or what types of actions people interacted with. And it just makes you so much more flexible. And then the other kind of main thing I wanted to highlight was active lists. So, lists are like the holy grail when it comes to marketing in HubSpot. And if you have your filters set to CTA click, then obviously you can see all of the people who have clicked your CTA. You can sometimes create, if I can't remember if it's a standard property or not, but has this person clicked the CTA? You can also create that as a property if you want to use it for whatever other sorts of things. But then also CTA views. That's super, super helpful for, like, maybe this CTA isn't something that you actually want people to click on. Maybe it's just you want to know if they saw it or not. And maybe it only appears if you scroll down so far on a page. So then now you know if someone interacted with your content enough to keep scrolling. Or maybe you have multiple versions of, or like multiple pages, but certain CTAs only appear on each page. So now you know which page they visited or how they interacted on that page. So lots of cool stuff. Okay, and then, like I said, campaign analytics. This, the campaigns tool is amazing. I'm sure it's on every marketer's wish list if you don't have access to it already. But like I said, you do not need campaigns to use CTAs. Um, I think it's important to mention how, like, well campaigns and CTAs work together. So CTAs are an asset in campaigns. So you can add, I have an example here of HubSearch. We had a HubSearch campaign with Profoundly, and I had certain CTAs that I created, and I add them to the campaign. And then now they're linked, like everything that's involved is all going to be tracked in that campaign. But if I don't have access to the campaigns tool right now, I can just create all of my CTAs. I track things historically, and then, 2 years from now, I add them to the campaign later, and I still have all my metrics. I don't have to go back and undo anything. I'm not rewriting the way that we use our HubSpot. It's a super sustainable way to build out your marketing tracking. Okay, and then here's some, like, just quick best practices that I thought it would be great to include. Um, so number one, use one CTA per use case, regardless of where you'll use it. So let's say you have a contact us CTA. That's a great example because that's like pretty much where this issue comes up. Um, you can have a contact us link on every page, but that should be one CTA the entire time. That way, your HubSpot's going to be able to track which page that CTA is performing on the best, rather than you having like 8 different CTAs, one for each page, and having to like combine all of that data in your head. I'm not very good at math, so like that's a nightmare for me. I want HubSpot to do the work for me, and that's absolutely possible. So number two, when you are doing some testing, so maybe let's say you want to test images against another, or let's see, you want to test like pop-up versus embed or pop-up based on certain triggers. You should use the A/B testing tool rather than creating multiple versions of the CTA. Now, HubSpot does allow you to create multiple versions of a CTA, so I have to be careful with my wording. But what I mean is don't like clone the CTA on your own and just have a bunch of versions. Wherever possible in HubSpot, the best thing to do is use one thing and measure that with the filters that HubSpot gives you. That way, you're getting a really well-rounded view of your analytics, but you can always segment it later based on a lot of other things. Okay, number three, consider using CTAs where you may have previously considered UTM or referral links. I talked about this a little bit earlier, but um, Danielle here made me aware of the fact that UTM links can't track within the same domain, which I never realized. So if you want to track how many people are going from one page to another on your website, you can't do that with UTM links. You can do that obviously with a normal link, that's how websites work. But if you want to actually track it in a simple way or like trigger anything based off of that, CTAs are a great way to do that. Number four, consider using CTAs that appear as forms rather than the forms themselves. This is kind of a judgment call situation. So you might already have a bunch of forms that you do not want to get rid of the analytics for, or like further um, dilute the analytics by changing things. So I wouldn't do it then. But if it's something that's like a super simple form, like maybe a newsletter sign up, that you could have a button, you could have a form, you could have a form and a button, consider using a CTA, and then you can trigger all sorts of fun stuff by it. You can like include it in emails, just play around with it. Number five, make edits to CTAs rather than creating new ones for updates. This kind of relates to the other ones, but again, just don't dilute your data. You want to keep all of your data in one object, if we want to call it an object, one instance of this CTA's object. Um, if you are making any changes to your CTA, you want to see the difference that those changes made. So rather than creating a new version, if you're I don't know, if you're going through a rebrand or I don't know, you're just changing the color, changing the text, whatever, like if it makes sense, try to keep using the same CTA so that you can track success over time. That's the whole point of measuring analytics. Number six, use CTAs across the buyer's journey, not just for conversion tracking. This is one of my favorites. So like an example of this would be don't just have a button that says buy now. Like, sure, you can have your button that says buy now or whatever better version of that there is. But maybe you have, so there's like learn more or like download the information guide or watch this video, watch this tutorial or watch this walkthrough of our facility. Like when it comes to educating people before they're ready to buy, track those things too. That way you can like, see how they're engaging with your content, see how quickly it takes for them to click that CTA to when they click the converting CTA. There's all sorts of things you can do. And like post sale too. You probably want to track, hey, if I had a customer, are they repurchasing or are they considering everything else that our company has? Consider conversion points after the sale so that you can see how those customers are interacting with your brand. Seven, segment contacts based on CTA engagement so that you can utilize smart content or different versions of things. So if you have someone clicking a CTA or viewing a CTA, however you have things set up, try to, like we said, use those lists, that holy grail of lists to have have your list of people that are interested in a certain thing, or have a list of people that um, said they weren't sure about something. Maybe there's a pain point that you know about. Then use emails to just those people. Maybe there's people that just viewed the CTA versus people that clicked it. Maybe that's a good way to segment things. Maybe someone's just a lead versus an MQL. There's all sorts of ways you can segment it. You can combine those filters, all sorts of fun stuff. And then number 8, explore automating communications through CTA engagement. So back to the workflows in HubSpot, there's so many CTA triggers that you can take advantage of. So rather than, for example, if someone fills out a contact form, but then they never fill out like another form after that, or maybe they fill out a contact form and then later they fill out like a request a quote form. What if, like, if you already have their information, maybe it makes more sense to like be a little less salesy and a little more personal. Maybe they find it a little less creepy too. If you email them and just say, like, hey, I just thought you'd find this useful. You don't have to say, I saw that you were on our website. You can just say, hey, I thought maybe you'd find this interesting because you're in blah, blah, blah industry. But you saw them on that industry's page. Reach out then rather than waiting for them to convert and them like kind of bracing for a salesperson to reach out. That way it just makes the whole process a little bit more like authentic and consistent for the user, for the lead. Okay, this is the fun part. Some unique use cases for CTAs. And if anybody watching this has some examples of how you use CTAs in your HubSpot portal, I would love to know them. So feel free to like make a chat in the Slack, the role marketing Slack. But so I want to talk about some examples that I've used. Back to Profoundly. So we've been doing a Hub Search campaign, like I mentioned, um, and Hub Search isn't the same HubSpot portal as Profoundly's. So while we have a campaign in the Hub Search portal, how do we track success in the Profoundly portal to know like what's working to get people to register for the event? Well, we created a CTA. We made it a simple link, a text CTA that tracked, how many people went to that page from the Hub Search email. And now we can see that in the Profoundly portal without having to switch portals constantly. And we can align that with a campaign. Okay, next example. Um, Having multiple CTAs where previously you might have had to have multiple forms. So if someone's downloading content from your resource library, for example, and you don't want to have to make them fill out a form each time because that's really annoying, you can you can either ungate the entire thing and just have them fill out CTAs and then, once they do convert at a certain time, you'll have all of that data matched up through HubSpot, or you can have them fill out one form. It unlocks the resource library, and then they can click whatever they want, download whatever they want, but you know what they downloaded, or you know what they viewed and thought about downloading. Okay, cross-domain tracking. This is another one from Profoundly, obviously. Um, so at the profound.ly website page for Profoundly, we have two main links that you might have seen. We have Get HubSpot Help for the marketplace users, and then we have Give HubSpot Help for Profoundly certified pros. And the marketplace, again, isn't on the same domain as the main profound.ly, but we can track how many people we're sending there with a CTA. So it's just a very simple button, but now we know we have an idea of, how successful our campaigns are, our social efforts are, our SEO efforts are, but we're not losing that metric just because we're sending them to another website. And then I think this is my last one, but views of targeted content. So this is an image CTA. There's a button below it as well. But like a really popular example of this is on the sidebar for blogs. If you have an image, first of all, it's just a lot more appealing than a bunch of text because the blog, you want people to focus on that text. But Also, this is back to what I said a little bit earlier with being able to track based on just views rather than clicks. If someone viewed this blog and it has a tag of a certain type of content, then I know they like that certain type of content. Or I can count how many CTAs they've viewed. Or if we put this CTA at the bottom of the blog, we can see if they made it to the bottom of the blog. So lots of cool things you can try with that. But yeah, I think that's about it for me. And again, I'm curious how anyone else is using CTAs in HubSpot. It's an ever evolving tool, as is all of HubSpot, but I think it's super accessible, it's super like nimble, and it really helps you get like not just scrappy, but it's the foundation to all of your marketing efforts in HubSpot, I truly think. So, whether you have examples now or if you want to share them in the Slack and we talk about it later, I'd love to know.
I just want to say thank you so much. This has all been super informative and helpful. I currently have a specialist role with a gym franchise, and while I'm not directly in marketing, that's what my background is. So I was sent to this breakout room by Joshua Oakes, who I primarily work with. And I just wanted to say that this was very informative for the next time I work with our marketing team and our graphics team to see if they're doing things correctly. Especially like links as like text CTAs instead of just posting a link somewhere, I think is going to be super helpful with a couple of the different sales outreach things we have. So definitely thank you for including that.
Amazing. I'm so glad to hear that. Thank you for sharing that, Sam.
Yeah, and I love that CTAs have like come so far recently because not that long ago, CTAs were just like fuzzy text buttons. As of like last year,
Fuzzy, yes, the fuzziness.
never render correctly for some godforsaken reason. But now you have all these options with like the exit intent pop-ups and the fly-ins. And I don't know if you can do a click trigger, but you can do so much with it. And I love the example of the content library because I have been like preaching that everyone needs to ungate their content, but nobody wants to lose the visibility into the buyer's journey. And this just solves that.
Absolutely. I totally agree.
And yeah, UTMs within a single session. You can't use UTMs on your own website because it creates a new session. So then you screw up all of your data. That's why you can't use it internally. But there are other options if you have some like web dev that needs to track it in another system. They're just not UTMs.
Well, good, because I hate UTMs. I just never get it right. So if I can avoid them, I'm all about it.
I just copied and pasted a link today that I saw a misspelling in their UTM. And I'm like, oh, you did not
Yeah.
do that. Yeah, they're right up there with attribution. If you do it right, they're super cool and you can track like really granular things because you have so many layers of breakdown, but it can be difficult to translate that into something meaningful. And I feel like if you can use another tool, like your example with Jason sending out that link, super cool. Love that.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Well, I think it looks like we're going to be heading back to our main room. But thank you guys for attending. I really appreciate it. And I hope everything goes well for you with your role, Sam.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was awesome.
Cool.